Getting messages left, right, and centre asking if it started.
Okay, we're live now. Wonderful. Okay. I'll give it 2 seconds to let it be shared to like.
Getting messages left, right, and centre asking if it started.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, we're already up to 12 people watching. Wonderful. Okay. I think we still got numbers building up. We'll get started and people can trickle in. That's fine. So welcome to this collaboration between Raise Glasgow and the Glasgow Dialectic Society. Hi, I'm Lenny. I'm president of Dialectic, so I'll give you a little pitch on that, and then I'll hand over to Andrew, who is one of our speakers, but also in his spare time, Raise president. So the Dialectic Society, I think technically the oldest society on campus at Glasgow, but mainly what we do now is we host fun socials, we host black tie dinners when we're allowed to be in the same room as each other, and we'll host like panels like this and talks. So recent speakers from the last few years have included like Mari Black, had a brilliant event last week with the Israel-Palestine Dialogue Society, talking with people on the ground, sort of in the area, sort of talking about activism happening in that part of the world. So that's sort of what we do. Andrew, if you want to do a quick introduction, what is Raise? And then we can get started.
Yeah, well, Raise is probably the contrast that is one of the newest in Glasgow at the university. So we are a new student-led charity initiative that has sort of sister organisations across the UK, which Joe will talk to you about later. But we really focus on trying to put celebration and giving together. So we believe that giving should be at the heart of all celebration, and really when you're doing well, you can also sort of celebrate that by giving to others. So we're really happy to be here and kind of share our message and kind of explain to you a bit more about what Raise is, because there's a lot of different things. So looking forward to having a bit of a chat with you guys today. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we have 2 speakers with us today. We have Andrew, who is the president and founding member of Raise in Glasgow, and we have Joe, who was a founding member of the entire initiative in Cambridge when it started about 3 years ago. So to start with, I'll just throw a ballpark question to both of you, which is like, what is Raise? What is its sort of core message and like core thing that it aims to achieve?
Do you want to go first with this, Joe?
Yeah, sure, I can take this one. So Raise at its heart is about bringing together giving and celebration, as Andrew said. So we believe fundamentally that giving and celebration can go hand in hand, and that each is more rewarding when you have the other involved. And we do that by inviting students to make a personally significant donation to charity, and then putting on a celebration at the end of the year to mark the impact of those donations. And the idea is that by kind of engaging with the kind of significance of their donation at the event and kind of thinking about the act of giving to charity actively, not just passively, we can really get people feeling positive about donating, really appreciate the kind of massive positive impact that giving can have, and thereby kind of engender really positive feelings and kind of create lifelong culture of giving in students that will hopefully like not only have a massive impact, kind of donations made in any one year, but really encourage them to have like a lifelong, really positive impact through kind of philanthropy. Okay.
Andrew, would you like to add to that, or?
No, I think that's really the sort of the main point of it all. It's a new sort of Raise looks at charity slightly different to a lot of other charities, in the sense that, as Joe said, we look for a personally significant donation. So a lot of charities obviously are, whether it's a tub at the side of a checkout Tesco or someone standing with a bucket, are looking for sort of spare change, like every little helps, which is kind of the approach that a lot of different charities take. Whereas Raise kind of, we don't look for the little donations. We want people to stand back and think about what they could give and give a significant donation to them. So although that value varies between person to person, we want people to really think about that. So, and I think that's quite an important thing that sets us apart from other charities as well. It's that significance and really thinking about what you're doing, so that it's not just something that you do on a random Tuesday and you forget about it as soon as you've done it. It kind of sticks with you, and hopefully it changes your mindset and stays with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. So I'll come to Joe. Where did the initial idea of Raise and its sort of founding in Cambridge come from? What was the idea behind all of that?
Yeah, so it started, I think, just under 3 years ago in Cambridge. And so I'll set a little bit of the scene, because in Cambridge, there are these kind of very extravagant end of year parties kind of to celebrate the end of exams called May Balls. And the idea of Raise, or actually Mayweek Alternative, as it kind of originally was known in Cambridge, was, well, kind of me and a group of people who set it up, we saw this kind of culture of celebration at the end of the academic year in Mayweek in Cambridge. And we thought, that's kind of a really positive atmosphere. There's a huge amount of potential there. Like, can we harness that positive atmosphere to really kind of make some positive change? And from that came the idea of combining the celebration with giving. And the aim there, as I say, was to try and harness the positive atmosphere of Mayweek with the kind of also the very positive effects that can come from giving. And yeah, so I guess Raise originally grew out of that, and the idea of kind of coming together at a celebration at the end of the year to celebrate, obviously in Cambridge, mirrored the Mayweek kind of balls or summer parties that were put on. We've kind of, obviously, like, Glasgow doesn't have the same tradition necessarily, but equally Raise isn't necessarily reliant on that. And I guess that's one of the things we've discovered coming to Glasgow, is that obviously originally started in Cambridge with that very specific context. We've now kind of expanded beyond there, including Glasgow, and kind of that's like the context was kind of where it grew from in Mayweek, but it's not necessary for Raise to work. It's like Raise is a much bigger thing about kind of bringing together a celebration in kind of any of its forms with giving.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just to jump onto that, I think also that last point there, although it was a nice way to start with being an alternative to the May balls, but it was more getting down to the actual issue itself, which is there isn't kind of the same level of that sort of you give to celebrate something you've done, and then you have sort of, you celebrate your donation and the effect it has. So although you looked at the May balls as kind of, this is an alternative that's happening and we could do something really positive off the back of that, I think people in Glasgow, we're seeing, are engaging with it just as well, because they think, well, no, there's not something that I'm kind of doing instead, but I still want to celebrate and give at the same time. And I think that's why people are really engaging with it. I think it's the concept of it. It's not reliant on the May week, which it started with in Cambridge.
Yeah, almost as you put it like that, Andrew, it's as if by expanding beyond Cambridge, we actually come to discover like what are the really important ideas at the core of Raise that make it work. And it's not like any Cambridge specific context, as it turns out, because like we've had lots of success in Cambridge, but like as you've shown, it's clearly possible to get people behind it in other places as well. Like what's actually at the core of Raise like is this kind of combination of celebration and giving. I guess expanding beyond Cambridge has kind of helped us realize what was just the circumstances around how we happened to set up and what was like really core to the idea.
Yeah.
So Andrew, I'll come to you, which is what sort of, as the kind of core concept sort of initially being about sort of these May Week balls, how was it trying to adapt sort of the sort of message to Glasgow and trying to sort of bring that across? What did you have to change? What did you have to like?
Yeah. Well, it's actually quite interesting because when I saw or sort of the opportunity to come up to be a founding member of a new chapter, I didn't really even focus on the fact that that there was a May ball, or it was a May, because as Joe said, it was originally called May Week Alternative. It's still called May Week Alternative in Cambridge. But I didn't even really think of that because I thought it seems like something that Glasgow would really engage with, just the type of people, the community that we've got here, as well as the fact that I almost saw it as a positive that we didn't have a May ball, because one, offered a celebration at the end of term, which people weren't having. It was sort of that we lacked competition in that sense, which, funnily enough, Cambridge benefited from that kind of competition, but we kind of, I thought that as well. But it's really kind of, you could just tell it would work, and get people involved in it to. It's quite a difficult one because when you look at it, but I didn't really think of it at the time. I more just thought about leading the sort of movement through and having that celebration and bring giving in with it, and we can see obviously how that grows. But I think it will be just as successful because we don't need to. A common misconception in Cambridge and Oxford, where it's expanded to as well in Durham, and something they need to fight, is the fact that you're not buying a ticket for a ball, you're not paying for something, you're donating and then you're celebrating that donation. And at Glasgow, we don't have that issue at all because it's very clear that you're not paying £75 as our recommended donation for a ball ticket, because there's no other balls happening that's where people kind of get that in their head. We're not a charity ball. We're very sure of that. And they spend a lot of time convincing people of that in Cambridge, and it's taken time. Whereas because we have sort of a level playing field, we have a clean slate, we've managed to build it completely in whatever image we want. So the initial application for it, I didn't think about, but since carrying it through and talking to Joe and George, who's also the founder, and other presidents from around the country, I've sort of found that Glasgow is actually doing quite well in the sense not having that sort of battle. So it's working well, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah, I'm glad it's working well. Just before we carry on, I'll point out we have a Slido in the comments section of the live stream. On the live stream has been shared in many places, but on the original post, you'll find it in the comments, and there you can join in the conversation, send in any questions you might have. That will be live, so please do that. But we'll move on. We'll talk a little bit more about the charity that Raise have chosen to donate their money to. So yeah, I'll put this as a ballpark question, just whoever wants to answer it can go for it. But why was the malaria charity chosen to the lucky one?
Do you want me to field that? I can.
Yeah, you can start that now.
Yeah, so there are a few reasons we kind of recommend that people, when they're donating through Raise, donate to the Against Malaria Foundation. And the most important one is that we've kind of looked very hard at the recommendations of several kind of very highly thought of charity evaluators, and the Against Malaria Foundation consistently comes out at the very top. So I guess Andrew's, or like we both alluded to the fact that like Raise is all about making a personally significant donation. And like, we believe that it's important that if people are donating significant amounts of money through Raise and trusting us with that, then we like have a duty to think properly about where that money is going and make sure that we're actually having a proper impact. And as part of that, we kind of have taken the advice of various different people. So there are charity evaluators like GiveWell, for example, you can look at, and they go and they look at lots of different interventions into lots of different cause areas. They try and evaluate, well, how much does it cost to have different amounts of impact in different areas, and kind of the Against Malaria Foundation comes out pretty highly. And taking a step back and looking at where that is, well, that's because malaria is a really massive problem. It's like, the numbers are kind of staggering, but it's like 400,000 deaths a year, for example, from malaria. Like, that's mostly pregnant women and children under 5, and mostly in developing countries where it has a massive knock-on effect on the economy. And AMF's so effective because it's really cheap to stop people getting malaria. Like, a bed net costs like a couple of dollars and will protect like about between 1 and 2 people for a couple of years. And that means that it's actually possible for not that much money to have a really massive impact. So we talk in Cambridge, for example, about the fact that the money students have raised there, I think we've had about 600 students join in 3 years, and they've raised, I think, about £150,000, and that's been enough to protect like a population equivalent to the whole population of Cambridge, which is a pretty decent sized city. I have to say, I don't know the population of Glasgow off the top of my head, but like the population of Cambridge is like 150,000. We protected like 1.5 times that number of people that help protect that many from malaria. So I guess that's like the fundamental reason why AMF, it's because they're incredibly cost effective. They allow us to have this truly enormous impact.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, as well as that, just to put another figure in there, to people love figures, is that if someone, so we can go on and talk about this a bit later, but we have match funders that, so for every donation we get, we double it to go to AMF. So once, using our recommended donation of £75, once that's been doubled, an individual donation can protect 170 people from malaria. So one person can have a huge impact. That's like a whole lecture hall from one donation. So whereas there's no kind of skimming off the top, or there's very little skimming off the top. It's only for the essential. There's no big wages or bonuses or anything. I think it's about $50 million charity that has 4 employees or something along those lines. So it's very cost effective. So people can be guaranteed that their donation is doing good. And as Joe said, when someone's giving a lot of money, we want people to know that their donation is doing as much good as possible. So that's why we recommend that charity.
Like, just to add one point to that, like, one of the things that helps it be massively cost effective is like they like really good, exceptionally good with the data they provide us and exactly where the impact is. So everyone who donates through Raise to AMF gets like extremely precise figures on where the money goes. So for example, last year I can remember seeing like the exact region in Tanzania where like the bed nets I ended up like funding ended up like down to the exact number of nets in the exact region. Like previous year we were given the exact same data for like where it went in Papua New Guinea or whatever. So it's like, it's truly incredible the amount of detail they can give, and that's what allows us like ultimately to be accountable to the people who join Raise, because that's what's really important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I have a question coming in on the Slido which relates to this, which is, could I donate to Rose? Oh, is there? If I start that again, it says, do I need to give to AMF? Would it be possible to donate to Raise and donate to another charity?
Yeah, so I'll go with this one. So for all the reasons we've just commented on, we recommend the Against Malaria Foundation. But it's important to know for everyone that's interested is we are not the Against Malaria Foundation. We're not a branch of their fundraising department. We are trying to change the way the students feel about giving. All of the stuff we said at the start about putting giving at the heart of celebration. That is really what we are championing. We are not raising money for them, although we do really support that. So if someone came forward to us and said, love the idea, really want to get involved, but I have a strong personal connection to the Beatson or anything that they thought they wanted to donate to, then we would celebrate that just as much, because it's a significant donation going away and thinking about it if you want. So it's important that people realise that there's thought behind choosing AMF, but we want to get as many people involved as they can in Raise. So you can donate to any charity you wish to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, obviously you'll kind of probably gathered in the way we're describing Raise at the start, there's nothing, like the philosophy is much more than just about a specific charity, and it's not related to any specific charity. So if people want to buy into that, then like you can join Raise donating anywhere. But we think AMF, we've thought very carefully, like, because we want to be accountable about where we recommend, and kind of for all those reasons we recommend AMF. But yeah, as Andrew says, it's not integral to the bringing together kind of giving and celebration, that aspect of our philosophy. So if like anyone is really excited about that but would like to give somewhere else, that's completely fine.
Yes, I guess on the subject of multiple charities, we actually have another question on Slido, which is what makes a significant donation at one time sort of more effective, or why should you be doing that over giving smaller donations to multiple charities throughout the year?
Joe, do you want to take this, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so, I mean, I can try fielding an answer. So I think that one is not necessarily more effective than the other. Like obviously, it's kind of massively dependent on context, and like obviously individuals will like it'll be more financially feasible for some people to give like small amounts regularly, or there might be kind of personal reasons why people want to donate to a specific charity. Having said that, I think that like obviously Raise has a specific model, and I think that's unusually effective for a couple of reasons. I think like potentially the biggest part of that is like encouraging students to really engage with their donation and kind of donate in a significant way. And I think that's particularly effective because if we get people thinking about exactly where they're giving and ultimately engaging with that process, understanding where it's going, understanding what the impact of it is, and as a result, actually feeling positive about giving, being able to kind of combine that with celebration, kind of mark the act of giving in a positive way, and ultimately feel positive about the whole process, then I think people ultimately respond to that much better. It's much easier to give once, to feel good about giving once, and then to continue to support a cause in the future if the whole act of giving and supporting those in need has been a positive experience. And I think it's much easier to feel that way if you've properly engaged in the process. I think it's very easy to fall into the habit of giving small amounts, but either giving because we feel a moral obligation or giving kind of without thinking. And that's kind of good. Like, I think there's that kind of giving is great because the money will go to places that really need it. But it's much easier to sustain that over a long period and actually give in a way that makes us kind of more inclined to give in the future if we're really engaging with the positive consequences of it. So I think, and like ultimately it's making a significant donation that allows people to engage in that way. So that's why I think the model of what Raise is doing is particularly effective. Like obviously it's not the only way to give, and there are other effective ways, but that's why, I guess, does that answer the question about why I think it's like.
Yeah, I think also kind of off the back of that is there's a kind of practicality to it as well. If I turned around and said to you, can you give me £5, please? I need to do that 15 times to get the equivalent to one significant donation. So to have the same size of impact with small donations or £1 donations, if you're getting 75 £1 donations, people still want to have a conversation with you and sort of understand where their money's going. And one or larger donations are much more kind of resource. We can spend longer talking to someone, explaining where the money's going for a significant donation than lots of little ones. So the impact that people can have is much greater just due to the actual time that it takes to process all and everything that goes in behind it. It's also going down to just the processing of it all as well. If in a similar way to if you go into a shop, you used to have to pay for transaction fees under £5 because if you're paying by card, because little transactions take up time, resource, everything's involved with whether that's a £5 donation or £75 donation. So we can have a huge impact, and that's even bigger if there's a significant donation and people do have that lasting sort of memory of it, and it's not just a fleeting thing that they do on a random day. So, and some just stop me if I'm going on. Sorry, but the last thing is we at Raise, we're not a charity in ourselves. We don't have kind of financial pressures in the same way that a lot of charities do, which require a sort of constant stream. So some charities want you to sign up and pay monthly because they do have overheads, whether that's offices or shops or phone lines or wages, as well as giving. We don't have any of that because we're not actually a charity. So we can take it all in February or March or whenever our donations drive is and donate it all at once. We don't kind of need that stream. Yeah.
So I think another question from Slido is sort of, what is it that attracted you to sort of this philosophy and attracted you to getting involved and giving your time and your energy towards helping Raise and helping sort of spread its sort of philosophy to students?
Yeah, well, obviously Joe's in a slightly different boat because he was part of the starting team to I was looking at what they'd done. And I thought that's quite amazing. In the first year, they'd started with 40 people, second year 150, third year 400. So it had a huge momentum. It was growing really quickly, and you could tell that it was people were engaging with it. And I thought, that's quite exciting. There's obviously something behind it. And by the time that I looked at it, I thought I had never contemplated that. I never thought of that sort of giving, kind of the regular £5 donations you presume is better. But I was used to being stopped in Buchanan Street or outside Hillhead subway station with people asking for money. And there's a sense in many charities that you are doing it out of obligation, or you can sort of be made to feel guilty if you don't. And that Raise looked at it very positively, like, do this, we can celebrate together, do it all part of celebration. I thought that's a really nice way of looking at charity, because it's such a good thing that people do regardless of how they give. But if people can give, do a good thing and feel good at the same time, do good and feel good at once, then that's an amazing sort of model. So that's why I thought should bring this to Glasgow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the feelings that got me involved were like very similar. Obviously, I was kind of involved from close to the start, but like what's kept me engaged is just like ultimately seeing it work and seeing like person after person hear the idea and like stop and think, and then like often there's a little bit of pushback initially and like people don't quite get why we're doing it, but once you sit down, you take the time to explain to them, and like it starts to click and they start to understand, you see someone actually engage. And because ultimately what we're asking people to do is to stop and to think and to do something that's not easy. Like no one makes a personally significant donation almost kind of by definition without thinking, so we have to get every single person who joins Raise to think. But like when you see someone go through and do it and then engage and then think, yeah, right, I'm going to do that, that's incredibly rewarding. Like that's really awesome. And then when you see like the first year 40 people do it, that's kind of great, and you raise like £12,000 and like help protect 15,000 people from malaria, and think like, wow, that's like much more money than I could like have raised via almost any other method from like 4 months at university. So that's awesome, and that kind of that drives you forward. And then next year, like you see 3 times as many people stop and engage, and like every one of them keeps you motivated and things like, yeah, this is working. And then like you get to 400, like, oh wow, like it's like having a genuinely massive impact, and that's kind of awesome. I guess that's, from an organizational perspective, what's kept me motivated working on it, and what got me involved in the first place. It's kind of seeing the success, as Andrew said. Like obviously, kind of, this is in some sense me personally actively engaging with the act of donating, and the act not only of donating but of persuading other people to do it. And kind of, in a sense, that's my personal story with the engagement, and that's kind of why I find it easy to talk about this, because it's like not just a process I'm persuading other people to go through, but I'm going through myself, and I guess Andrew is as well. And that's kind of, we feel it, and that's why it's easy to talk about, and that's like ultimately the other big part of what keeps us going.
Yeah, it's also having those conversations, because well, I took forever to totally understand the narrative. I sat in front of Joe and George in an interview and honestly didn't really know what was going on. But by the time you look into it and really have those conversations and start having those conversations with people, it dawns on you just how cool it is. And it's those conversations, like I probably had 10 or 12 chats with our committee before they could start telling people about it and start really understanding it. And as soon as that sort of light bulb moment happens and it clicks on how it all works, it's genuinely exciting. So that is true.
So a lot of organizations, I assume in other universities, but I know in Glasgow, the Dialectic Society of Stafford, are struggling with reaching out to people and talking to people in our sort of COVID world. Yeah. How is Raise combating that? How are you reaching people? How are you finding people and engaging with them?
Yeah, well, in Glasgow, we've got an amazing publicity team behind us, who have been putting so much effort and doing a great job to get out there, get in touch with contacts like yourselves, the charity fashion show we spoke to a bit, the Bone Marrow Glasgow, we had conversations with them. So we've been making loads of links, different places, and just trying to engage with people. But as well as that, we had 45 applications for rep roles, which are key to spreading the sort of message of Raise. And we look at it, if every rep themselves donates, or get someone else to donate, or 2 people to donate, then by that point you've got a huge number. If every rep gets another person, then you've got 90 people there, and then you've got 15 in the committee, or 13 in the committee. So you've got over 100 people very quickly. So how we're engaging is really through our reps, and they're the ones who are going to be having the conversations in the coming months and encouraging people to donate. So that's really the way we've done it. We've kind of been fortunate because we started at the very start not knowing how to engage with people in person. We've had to do it all digitally or over social media or something. So we've kind of benefited from not having to readapt. That's kind of been one of our biggest things, is not having to change.
Yeah, I think that's like completely the case. It's like Raise has always, as long as I've seen it, kind of been really based on a community of people. Because ultimately, if you're asking people to do something that's not easy and to engage, like most people do that because they've spoken to someone who's already gone through the process themselves. And so we've always been founded on a community of people who like are engaged, are talking to their friends, are kind of essentially a network. And that community is like obviously hard to maintain when you're only able to speak to people over Zoom. But I guess we've kind of had a head start in that we've always like aimed to build a really strong community, kind of whether that's through reps, through events. Like obviously arranging online events is a kind of poor substitute, but I know in Cambridge, for example, I've been attending some of the kind of virtual things put on by maybe Alternative here in Cambridge. They kind of run scavenger hunts, like many things I guess similar will be happening in Glasgow. And yeah, I guess it's kind of, the community's always been a strength of Raise. So it's like, maybe we're finding it harder than we would in a normal year, but still, because we've got an awesome team of reps and because we've always like focused on that, we're potentially finding it easier than average because we're starting from a better place. And I guess, yeah, if anyone's looking for a community, then like becoming a Raise rep is a great way to find that at the minute, because ultimately we are getting stuff like done and we are like talking to each other, even if that is having to happen mostly over Zoom at the minute.
I guess sort of on a relatively similar vein, but other than COVID, are there any big challenges that Raise has faced since its conception, getting its message across and getting people to engage?
Well, Joe's probably better to answer in terms of, because he's had more experience over the years. I think there's always going to be sort of individual issues, even that we are seeing, whether that's people misunderstanding the sort of idea behind it, or not agreeing with you, and because there's always people who won't agree in the way that you're trying to do things, which is good. One of our challenges is currently trying to get sort of affiliated with SRC and everything, because we're kind of in discussion with that, and that's things like that are the most difficult part about not being able to do things in person, because trying to discuss a complex thing over email and things like that we found this year. But I'll let Joe answer some of the more the bigger things.
I guess there are kind of, in a sense, getting anyone on board is difficult, and getting like the first 20 people on board was like a massive hurdle. But that's kind of obvious, so maybe I won't dwell on that. I guess another big factor that we've kind of, I wouldn't say struggled with, because ultimately like we have found solutions up until now, but one thing that like is always a factor is finding enough support to put on like our summer celebration at the end of the year. So obviously that looked quite different in Cambridge. We weren't able to gather all together in person, but still we rely, at least in part every year, for the summer celebration on the support of sponsors who are able to either give us money or donations in kind, and that helps us to put on the summer celebration for people to kind of mark the impact of their donations. And that's always been a challenge, finding organizations who are willing to do that. I mean, we've tended to find that once you get people sat down in a room and you can talk them through the philosophy and explain it, just like with individuals, kind of when you're trying to persuade them to donate, companies will buy into it. But obviously, like getting your foot through the door when you're an organization of like 5 individuals with an idea in someone's room at university is like a challenge. You have to get a bit of legitimacy before anyone will let you speak to them. So that was a challenge. And I guess the other interesting challenge is just trying to work out how, I guess this is a problem that every like university society will face, especially kind of anything that's run by students. But people move on and people leave university, and you kind of always got to be aware that like you're moving on and you're looking for other people to do the roles at some point. So we've always been quite mindful of that. Very interested to hear from anyone else who's like happy to take over or happy either to provide kind of long-term sponsorship or to get involved in the committee and take things over after we move on. Because like in a company or like a full-blown charity, for example, people hang around for multiple years, whereas kind of there's an inevitable shelf life on almost any student of like 4 years or whatever.
It's fun thinking that we all have a shelf life. On the conversation of the celebration, Andrew, what's the Glasgow celebration potentially going to look like this year with COVID and yeah?
Well, that's the question that we're all asking, isn't it? Really, we don't know yet. But something I just want to say quickly before I'll go into that quickly is the celebration itself. It's worth making very clear that that's paid for completely independently to any donations that are given through the initial donation. We pay for that independently. be that through further contribution or sponsorship. So people can be guaranteed that their significant donation, whether that's £75 or another significant donation to them, goes 100%, well, 200% once it's been doubled to charity. So that money is not used at all to throw the celebration. In terms of the celebration for this coming year, we're hoping to have aspects of it in person. We've got a good events team currently. We've got 3 contingencies. We've got sort of total lockdown, no in-person stuff. We have limited numbers, so whether that's groups of 6 that we can use smaller venues or whatever, we've got that planned. And we'll also have on the back, just in case we're all vaccinated and we're all good to go by summer, we will have a plan for a full-blown summer party. Obviously looking less likely than the other 2, but we will, regardless of what happens, hope to have some in-person celebration as well as a virtual aspect to it. We've already secured a sponsor for that, and I had communication with a couple of drink sponsors. So we've got a couple of well-known names. It should be good fun regardless of whether it's in person or not. We hope to get sort of refreshments to people if it's all online. We'll have that sort of aspect, entertainment, speakers, hear a bit more from the Against Malaria Foundation, what they're doing. And we're very clear that we will definitely have entertainment, speakers, musicians, and some form of food and drink for everyone. If they're watching it online, then we can do that. Or if they're watching in person, we can also do that. So we have both plans currently being organised side by side, and one's not being prioritised yet. We're waiting to see what happens. It'll be good regardless of that.
I think even in Cambridge last year, when we were all at home and not at university, I basically couldn't leave the house. We still made a celebration happen. So I don't think there's any question that you won't celebrate in Glasgow this year. It's just a question of how, not if.
Yeah.
Earlier on this year, Dialectic ran a delivery service, wine and cheese, over Zoom around Glasgow, which was it was fun. It was an experience, a lot of walking.
Yeah.
So another question, exciting. What is the reason, or is there a reason why students in particular should be giving to charity and should be giving sort of these donations?
Well, I think that obviously university and being a student is a time for learning, regardless of whether that's in class, whether that's living on your own, cooking. There's so many learning curves that happen, and why not chuck another one in there, which is starting to make giving part of your day-to-day life, or something you sort of think about and do. Where our generation are sort of celebrated as being sort of socially aware and socially conscious, and it gets to a point where, well, we can talk about it, but we should also have some direct action as well, which is sort of, don't like to say putting your money where your mouth is, but that kind of idea that, well, yeah, it's great to say that we need to sort malarial deaths, but here's the opportunity to do it, so let's do it. And I think that's something that's really important for students to get involved in, because a lot of times in your life you will have many other financial pressures as well, and it's a good time to start doing it when you're at university, and you can kind of take time, and everyone likes to celebrate, and it's sort of starting good habits early, I suppose, is another idea as good with students.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. Like, obviously, I don't think the kind of core idea of RAISE is exclusive to students. My kind of part of our hope is that actually people adopt that attitude and take it throughout their life, kind of far beyond their time as a student. But having said that, obviously, the attitudes we form as students, we will take through our whole lives. And it's kind of one of the most important times for forming those attitudes, as Andrew alluded to. So that's why I think it's kind of particularly important for us to be talking to students about this sort of thing. Also, like, it's the first time that most of us have had like significant financial independence, and therefore we'll be making these sorts of decisions about if we want to give, where we want to give for the first time. And I think kind of at that point, thinking about the sorts of ideas that Raise is bringing in our sort of philosophy is very natural when you're kind of starting to form those opinions and habits about how and where you give.
I'll just give a reminder again for those watching along on Facebook. We have a Slido. Please add any questions you want to, and feel free to upvote and downvote the questions you think are particularly good and bad, and we'll try and incorporate them. I think we have scheduled about another 10 minutes left, so we'll try and get through as many as possible in that time. We've actually had quite a few questions asking, are you able to train if you're not a student or not a Glasgow student? So, Andrew.
Yeah, so just, I cut you off there, I'm obviously too excited to answer this. Yeah, we are, well, we've had a few questions like that. We had reps, we actually did a rep application from Dundee, which wasn't quite within our limit just now, but hopefully we will expand to Dundee at some point. But as far as Raise Glasgow goes, it is Raise Glasgow. We are happy to get involved with as many people as possible. And to be a donor, you don't need to be a student, you don't need to be at Glasgow University. You can be, Raise Glasgow is Glasgow, all of Glasgow. So we also incorporate Strathclyde, Calais, ourselves, and all the colleges. We have formed in Glasgow University, and this is kind of where we're working from. This is where all the committee are from. But it is Raise Glasgow. We're happy to kind of incorporate the whole place, and hopefully over the coming years we'll do that more so, as much as possible. But going out with that, if there were staff who wanted to get involved, members of the public, we do want to involve them as well, because it doesn't really matter who you are. You can get engaged with Raise. It doesn't matter your background, your current life position. We want to get as many people involved and celebrate giving as possible. So in short, no, it doesn't matter. Currently our committee are only from Glasgow University, and our reps are only from Glasgow City. That might change in the coming years, but a donor can be from anywhere and from any stage in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, obviously, you're very welcome to donate and kind of join the movement that way, wherever you are. Like, you don't have to be based in the UK. It's like the donation platform all online. It's not like you have to come to Glasgow with anything. Like, I imagine if the event is happening in person and you want to attend it, it will be in Glasgow. But beyond that, there's not a problem. And if you're based in Durham, Oxford, or Cambridge, there's obviously a Raise nearer you. And if you're based in none of the four places, but still like feel really passionate, like, then definitely join one of them, at least by donating, and maybe even like get in touch, and we can see, like, maybe we want to bring a Raise like to a university near you.
Yeah.
Always on the lookout for new opportunities, I suppose. So what another question that's come in from the audience is, why is matching donations so important? You've spoken about it quite a lot, but why is this something that sort of has happened since the beginning of Raise?
Well, I think just Joe can go more into the detail of our actual matching process, but I think just if you can get your donation doubled, or it's free money to go to a cause that you want to support. So that in itself is quite unheard of when it comes to charity. There are obviously campaigns that double your donation and stuff, but it's just having an even bigger impact from your individual donation. It means that you can do twice as much good as you could on your own. So that's why we really celebrate it, and we're so grateful for having that funding there and being able to do it. But it just means you can have an even bigger impact with your donation. Yeah,
I guess there are like a few different perspectives. Like, why do we do it? Well, like, as Raise, we do it because we want to give kind of our donors like a really great proposition, and that's being able to have a really massive impact. And part of that is through the match funding. Like, why do our donors like the match funding? Well, I think, like, hopefully that's pretty clear. Like, we find that that's often one of the main things that attracts people, is like being able to have like twice the impact you would be able to through anything else. Now, why do our match funders want to match it? Well, that's because they see the kind of the perspective change aspect of Raised, really getting students to engage with the donation, change the way they think about charity, as a really valuable change in mindset, something they want to encourage. So that's why they match it. I think like that's ultimately the reason why the matching has come about from all the various different perspectives. I think it makes a lot of sense, both from our perspective, trying to maximize the impact, from the donor's perspective, again, with the same goal, and then from the match funder's perspective of trying to encourage long-term changes in perspective on charity, bringing together giving and celebration. That's how it's come about.
Wonderful. So you've had a slightly different question come in as well, which is sort of very different to what we've been talking about, which is someone's asking, which is there's sort of a saviour narrative amongst a lot of charity, and especially when we're talking about donating to sort of other countries that are sort of potentially poorer. How has Raise gone about combating this, or how is it that like maybe we should all go about combating this and talking about charity?
Yeah, so I think we're obviously very aware of this, and I think it's firstly like quite important for us to steer clear of, or be very careful in the way we're talking about. For example, we don't want to kind of celebrate the fact that there are these problems to solve. Like that's completely not what we mean by celebrating giving. And we're not celebrating, the summer party is not a celebration of kind of us as donors, because the point is not to kind of congratulate yourself for having made the impact. Again, kind of, I guess those are the sorts of issues that probably the person asking the question is alluding to. I think what we do want to do is kind of engage with the fact that actually making the donation is like a fundamentally positive act. And if we can get people feeling good about donating and recognizing that kind of that is having a positive impact, then that's something that we can feel positive about. And because we're feeling positive about it, we're actually able to have more of an impact. And I think that's important. I think like the second aspect of it, obviously, is actually working with a charity that's going to like engage properly with local communities, kind of run an intervention that local communities want, that makes sense, that's well thought through. And I think AMF ultimately, like part of the evaluation process is that GiveWell runs that I talked about earlier, is to make sure they do that. So they do work with local communities in distributing the nets. They think about all these issues, and they kind of, because we trust them and we've seen good evidence that they're also thinking about these problems, that helps us from a kind of an operational side to feel confident that we're like the actual work we're doing is not perpetuating those issues, alongside the fact that kind of the wording we choose and the way we frame things is on our end very carefully chosen to avoid that.
Yeah, and I think obviously going back to the summer party, that's an important point to note. We're not celebrating one another, but instead sort of collective impact that we can have in helping an unfortunate situation that there is. We also celebrate the work of AMF and sort of the help that people are being offered instead of ourselves.
Wonderful. So, okay, I think we're just coming to the end. I guess the final questions are slightly more like housekeeping related, which are sort of so someone's asked how they can help and sort of join in with Raise if they don't have the money to make a donation.
Okay, so obviously what we keep saying is significant donation, and we are talking of a relative significant donation. So that can be whatever someone deems is significant to them. We won't ask questions about it. We just want people to really think about what's significant to them and donate, and that we do not set a minimum limit. We set £75 as our recommended just because we find that kind of it puts a figure in someone's head that they think, okay, I need to think about this. No, very, very few students are going to go into their pocket and give you £75 on the spot. So that's kind of what we're discouraging. We don't want people to do that. We want people to think about giving. So regardless of your financial situation, if you thought, well, I could go for a lower amount, then we would celebrate that just as much as we would celebrate the biggest donation we get. But beyond that, we also have the rep role, which we have finished our initial recruitment for a couple of weeks ago, but we'll be looking for some more reps just after Christmas. So they are crucial for spreading word. So if you yourself don't donate, but you encourage 2 people to donate, then that's you effectively encouraged an even bigger contribution than you'd have had yourself if you donated. So the rep role is really important to our whole working. So keep an eye on social media, and come the new year, we'll be looking for some more reps. So or get in touch with myself now, or through the social medias, and we can see what we can do to get you involved in Raise.
And the final housekeeping question is, when and how do people donate money to Raise? And how do they get involved in the society in Glasgow and in other universities, if we happen to have anyone watching from other universities?
So we've obviously got the reps who are a big part of the society in terms of sort of spreading the word and helping out with that. We have our committee, which make the day-to-day decisions and lead a team. Each of them have a subcommittee who focus the main 4 areas are fundraising, publicity, sponsorship, and events. So we've got 4 subcommittees, and we've already got them formed for this year just to kind of run that in our first year. But next year we'll be looking for more people to join these and get involved. So keep an eye on that. But going back, to get involved with us as a society, they can also become a rep. We also, in terms of the donation, we'll be running, we don't accept donations throughout the year. We have one central donations push, or one like primary donations push, which will be in the new year. The exact dates of that still to be confirmed, but it'll be around February, March time, just before we finish up. So that can be a nice end of term donation and big thing that you do. We'll launch that, and we'll have a launch party dependent on COVID restrictions as well. And that's when you can get involved. So keep an eye on social media. Contact us if you've got any questions at all. Contact a rep, and we can pair you in with more questions, because I get we're going to run out of time soon here. So if there's anything else, just get in touch with us.
Wonderful. Yeah, very exciting. Okay, so now as just like a little final sort of, I don't know, amuse-bouche at the end of the talk, well, what is your sort of like favorite memory or favorite sort of experience you've had as a result of working with Raise?
Well, I have obviously just started in September there, but one of the best things that I've had is actually the application process and speaking to new people who want to get involved with it, and seeing the excitement that brings people, because we had a huge number of applications, totaling over 60 odd people wanting to get involved in the actual formation of it. So that's been really exciting. It's been really encouraging to see, and I know that we've got a future here in Glasgow now, because there's been so many people engaged with us. So that's been something that's been really exciting for me in these early days.
Yeah, so I guess Andrew's reminded me of another thing, which is actually just interviewing people has been like amazing. Just hearing people almost say back to you kind of the philosophy you've been kind of trying to get out there for so long. But maybe there are kind of a couple that actually really stand out to me. The first one is the donations period in 2019, where we doubled the number of people who had joined in like the last 24 hours, and we went from being like still a reasonably small group of like tens of people, we maybe at 80 like gathered, to suddenly having like 160 plus join us. And that was kind of when we went from kind of a reasonably small group of people to an idea that was kind of genuinely permeating Cambridge. And then the final one, like obviously, has to be the last in-person summer party we organized in 2019, which was an amazing experience, seeing it all come together with those 160, 170 people. Obviously, we didn't have that last year, and I imagine if we had, that would kind of be on this list, but I have to wait till next year.
Something else COVID has taken from us. Anyway, thank you people for listening. I'm going to hand to Andrew now to do just a little like plug of events that Raise will be running in Glasgow as a society, and then I'll do the same shameless plug for Dialectic. But Andrew.
Yeah, so obviously, as you've heard, we don't run like regular events in terms of fundraising, but we do have our big donations push, which will be next in the new year. So there'll be a launch party for that. It'll be a good time to get involved. And then we've got the Ultimate Summer Party. Coming up just before Christmas, we will have a social event for all of our reps that we've recruited so far. So if you're a rep, look out for that. And if you've decided after listening to this, I really want to be a rep, email ourselves through social media or send us a direct message and we can get you sorted with that. So we've got the social event for reps, and then in the new year we have the donations push, which will have a launch party. And really just go away, like and follow us, and you should get some a lot of information through that and some interactive content as well, possibly. So that's the main thing.
Fantastic. And Dialectic, what do we have coming up? I think this is the last of our sort of talks and more sort of serious events for the year. So we're winding into sort of sillier social times. So this is now where, after talking about charity, I'm about to plug a murder mystery dinner. So normally we have a big black tie dinner to welcome all our new members. And unfortunately, obviously, because of COVID, we couldn't do this. So we're going to do a Zoom murder mystery dinner on Friday. So that's going to be really fun. There's currently a sign up form on the event, which is on our Facebook page, where you can sign up and then we'll send you your character and then you can like dress up if you want to, and we're just going to sort of have a lot of fun. We're all going to be sat in tables, and by tables I do mean breakout rooms, and it's just going to be a great fun time. And then beyond that, we potentially have a sort of a backwards debate going to happen, which would just be like a fun show, silly debate, where we sort of, the people who like summarize the debate speak first, and then like they say what everyone else has said already and tell them why they won or lost the debate, and then the people afterwards have to try and like work out what they're meant to be saying. So that should be a fun thing we're going to be doing, hopefully like during exam season, as more of a de-stress event. And then later on we should be having our Christmas party once again online, but it should be fun. We'll have to like eat some mince pies together, but you have to bring your own mince pies. So yeah, that's what Dialectic has coming up. It should be good fun. Yeah, as always, if people are interested in debating, our sister organization, the GUU, I don't know why it's not actually over there, it has debating every Tuesday, so that's also something you can get involved in, which is good fun, and you can do lots of public speaking, and lots of talking to people, and lots of telling people why you're right and they're wrong, and they should just get used to it. So, but in a polite way, so it's fine. Okay, so yeah, no, thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our speakers. It's been a brilliant event. We've had wonderful, like record numbers of people watching on Facebook, so this has been brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for everyone tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.